Hi there. Welcome to Fresh Air 5, episode 158. In this episode, you're going to hear me talk about a trip to Victoria, British Columbia, Ministry of Education, talk about artificial intelligence, talk about a whole lot of learning that I did, and wrapping up with my heading to shared learning professional development here in Abbotsford, BC. So without further ado, here we go.
I'm Alfonso Mendoza, host of the My Ed Tech Life podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter, coming to you every week from Abbotsford, which is about 45 minutes east of Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada. Fresh Air 5 is my regular attempt to get some fresh air by walking about my neighborhood, which is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Stolo people, the Simath First Nation and Mathwee First Nation. I consume podcast content while I walk, then reflect on this content in an unedited video which I post on my X, formerly known as Twitter, channel every day. This podcast is the collection of the audio taken from those daily selfie videos over the course of a week, Monday to Friday. So let's jump into my listening and learning this past week. Hey, PLN, it's Sunday, February 11, 2024. I'm on my way to Victoria, British Columbia for a meeting at the Ministry of Education tomorrow talking about artificial intelligence and digital learning in our province. And as I'm traveling on the road right now in my vehicle to get to Victoria, I listened to a podcast that I'm going to tell you about in the next segment. But yesterday morning, on Saturday morning, I turned on Teachers on Fire on YouTube, and there was a live stream between Tim Cavey and Phil Stringer, as Phil is from West Vancouver area and is a teacher, a math teacher, assessment guy, and a thinker. He's also a fellow Wordle companion in our private DM chat on Wordle. And it was so good to hear Phil and Tim talk about mathematics and how we don't see the mathematics that's all around us all the time. Phil talked about assessment. He talked about how we go about assessing and not marking everything as far as our homework goes, and what does homework mean. Do we do drill and kill, or do we do spiraling of content so that we can all do like the first part of Unit 1 and then the first part of Unit 2 and 3 all the way up to Unit 8, and then come back around to the second part of Unit 1 and tie things together to be a more cohesive and comprehensible idea of mathematics, as opposed to the unit on fractions that I didn't get, but then I get to geometry and I need fractions, but I struggled with fractions, and how can the practice and connecting the dots improve student learning. I liked, Phil, how you talked about spacing out the content in that manner, the spiraling. All right. Thanks, Tim. Thank you, Phil. This is going to be coming out on Teachers on Fire podcast. You can find it right now on Teachers on Fire YouTube channel, but I'm guessing it'll be 258 episodes in for Teachers on Fire podcast. Okay, bye. One more thing for February 11, 2024. As I said in the last segment, as I was driving to the ferry this morning to head to Victoria for a Ministry of Education meeting that I'm a part of tomorrow, I listened to a suggested to me podcast. So this is a new to me podcast called What Now with Trevor Noah. And it was suggested to me by Heather Beckett, a colleague in my district. And she suggested that she told me about an episode of What Now that she listened to with Trevor Noah, as he interviewed Sam Altman. And, I didn't know Sam Altman's name actually until I heard her say it. And I should have known because I use a tool that Sam Altman has been personally invested in and very engaged in over the past 5 years. And that is OpenAI's ChatGPT. And he is the CEO of not ChatGPT, but OpenAI and the work that they are doing. This interview with Trevor Noah delves into the fact that Sam Altman was fired one weekend and then soon thereafter was hired back as the CEO of OpenAI. What a crazy story. It was crazy to hear. I can't imagine the challenge that would be as you went back to work after you were fired, but the change of board probably makes a big difference, and his passion for the mission of what's going on at OpenAI makes a huge difference for that. Sam and Trevor talk about the humanity of artificial intelligence and needing to keep the human element present in that. Talks about artificial general intelligence and how do we know when we will arrive at that. Talks about how the large language model learns. And it was curious to hear the background that I had no idea about what's going on with OpenAI and the gradual deployment of these tools over time. All right, you should listen to this because it'll, I think, inform me. And that was episode 5 of season 1 of What Now with Trevor Noah. Take a listen. All right, talk to you soon. Okay, bye. One more thing for February 11, 2024. Just got off the ferry a few minutes ago and decided to head over to see where Royal Bay Secondary School is. And it's behind me here in the neighborhood of Royal Bay. And this is a relatively new school. The point of me being here is that this is the site of our fall conference for 2024 for MyPETA. So big shout out to MyPETA. And you should come to the conference if you're in the neighborhood. It's on the island this year, and it's going to be fantastic. All right, as I was driving, I listened to episode 90 of Science 360 as Tim Stevenson, Astro Stevenson, talks with his wife about teaching. They talk about teaching and talk about, how Tim does what he does at school, his passion, his enthusiasm, how he brings authenticity to his students so that they can leave feeling curious about the world around them. Thanks, Tim, so much for sharing that. I do something similar. I get passionate about something. I talk about, the podcasts that I listen to, the things I've heard, and the YouTube videos that I've watched, to inspire me to share about media design and creativity. It's about paying attention to your surroundings, being involved in watching the news, and being aware of what is going on. A big focus for me right now with my students, my in-building students, is talking about artificial intelligence and how it is going to and is impacting our lives already. We've got a kind of a district kind of policy thing about it. There's some geese flying over. Honking geese. All right, about whether or not we are using it directly in our classrooms with our students, ChatGPT. And we are not at this point, but I think it's going to change somehow. Can't tell you exactly how, but it's about staying focused and being aware of what's going on and sharing yourself, sharing who you are as a teacher and what you're learning about to inspire them to keep on learning. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Cheryl. Great to hear both of your conversation. And there's another episode coming where Cheryl and Tim talk on Science 360. That'll be coming up a bit later. Thanks. Bye. The last thing for February 11, 2024. This evening, I walked along Wharf Street here in Victoria, British Columbia. Went for dinner with a couple colleagues and had some good laughs tonight and good connection. It was awesome. As I'm walking back to my hotel now, I listened to Teach Happier with Suzanne Daly. This was season 4, episode, I think 22. But I'll get that correct in the show notes. And she talked about micro moments of love and talking about how, Valentine's Day is coming up and the grand gestures are, only good for just a moment. But what can we do to foster and strengthen our relationships with others? She talked about how loneliness can cause a lot of problems for people, and the way to overcome this loneliness is to strengthen the relationships that you do have so you don't feel lonely. She talked about the 5-for-5 rule by a doctor who suggested that you'll have to listen to her podcast to get the details exactly. But the 5-for-5 is reach out to 5 people for 5 days with one of the 3 things each day. That being something of gratitude, a note of gratitude, a note of offering support, or a note of asking for some help from these people. And that will, if you do that for 5 people for 5 days, and one of those 3 things, that will deepen your relationships with those people and cause less loneliness for you. So take a listen to this from Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate it. Caught this on Sunday when you dropped it before Monday, like intended. Finally, I did it. All right, that's all I got for today, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed listening to the podcast recordings today. And those of you that are catching at the end of the week, have a good week before you're listening to this on the podcast. All right, talk to you. Bye. Hey PLN, it's Monday, February 12, 2024. I'm over in Victoria, British Columbia, on my way to a meeting at the Ministry of Education today to talk about artificial intelligence and digital learning in our province. I don't exactly 100% know how it's going to go, where it's going to go, but I'm thankful that I'm part of a team that's been put together by the BCTF to represent teachers in this matter. All right, this morning I listened to episode 8 of the Generative Age with Alana Winnick as she talks at NICEGate, a conference that happened recently with the E-twins. That is Mario and Alfredo Herreras. And they keynoted and talked, and they're identical twins. They talk about their experience as identical twins in this world of presentations, etc., and all that stuff. They talked about generative AI. They talked about ethics and uses of artificial intelligence for teachers and for students. And it comes down to ethics. A lot of ethics is important in how we approach it. What did you use it for? Are you giving credit for the ideas where they came from? Were they your own ideas to start with, or did somebody else do that for you? You know, it gets around to the process of getting to a product more than the product is going to be sometimes. Though in our education system, we are judging the product a lot, and we need to look at the process with students and how they arrived where they did. All right, there's a lot here, so much here. And I feel that this is going to be the direction of my day a lot as we talk about best uses of this new technology that's right around us. Thank you, Alana, for having Mario and Alfredo Herreras, the E-twins. So they are one account on Instagram and do a whole bunch of stuff is because they're identical twins. They function as one, but they're not. All right, have a fabulous day. I will. And we'll catch you on the other side of my meeting, maybe. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, it is Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. Happy Valentine's Day to you, however that meets you right now. And I wish you well in your relationships, not just today, but all the time. And I hope that you find joy and happiness in your relationships. This morning, I listened to episode 89 of Evolving with Gratitude with Lainey Rowell. And Lainey brings us an interview she had with Dr. Robert Waldinger, who is the author of The Good Life. There's another co-author on that book. But Dr. Waldinger is the director of the longest standing study of happiness in the world at Harvard. It started in 1938. He's the 4th director, and they look at people's happiness in their life and what does that mean in different ways. You know, how do we pay attention to relationships? How do we get through life and find purpose and meaning? And how does social fitness, the act of practicing social relationships on a regular basis, affect our physical fitness, our health, and our life in our physiology? Lainey has a fantastic conversation with Dr. Robert Waldinger, and he gives her, I'm just noticing as I was listening, Lainey, I noticed the same thing, that he gave you his full attention in this interview that you had. He sounded like he was sitting right beside you on the couch, and he was right there with everything that you were doing. He talks about screens in our world today and how screens are there. They're all around us. There's a screen right in front of me right now, but because I'm walking and there's no other people around, I can focus on talking through my screen to you and giving you my full attention right now. There's screen stuff. There's a lot in this interview. You should take a look, listen to it, because it's fantastic and it'll bring you some joy and some insight. All right, thanks, Lainey. Thanks, Dr. Robert. Okay, bye. One more thing for February 14, 2024. All right, I'm going to give you a little bit of a follow-up from my trip to Victoria, British Columbia to the Ministry of Education this past Monday as I was there. If you're listening to the podcast, that was like just a couple segments ago that I was talking about being there. I haven't talked about my meeting yet and what we discussed, but we talked about artificial intelligence in our education system and looking at a 10,000 foot view of the landscape of digital literacy and citizenship and using digital tools in our classroom spaces and the effect it could have on our students and families and our society. We talked about these things. It was really good to meet with other educators that are wrestling with some of these similar topics because, we're all new to this. And I went into the meeting feeling a bit on the nervous side because I'm like, well, what do I have to offer? But by the time we got to the end of it, I had much to offer because I've been paying attention and learning myself. So my encouragement to you about artificial intelligence is to get into a learning mode about it. You might not necessarily use it in your classroom. You might be resistant because of the cheat factor that it's going to do. But if you're listening to my podcast, I don't think you're probably in that space. You should talk to your colleagues about, this is a tool that can increase teacher productivity. How do we use it with our students? So that's another question. And that's part of the wrestle that we're on right now. Homework that I have to do this week is to bring a reflection back from some teaching that I do in my classroom about artificial intelligence. And I'm going to approach that tomorrow with my secondary students. I'm going to talk to them about AI bias, about bias from artificial intelligence and data sets. And where does the information come from? We're going to look at that, have the students reflect on that. I'm going to reflect on that to create a learning story that I will provide to the Ministry of Education at the end. So that's a little bit about what's going on with me and the Ministry of Education and AI. So there you go. Thanks. I got one more to listen to. The last thing for February 14th, 2024, I listened to the Easy Ed Tech podcast as Dr. Monica Burns brings us 9 tips for classroom management in our blended learning and digital classrooms. So this morning I listened to this, and Monica, fantastic how you talk about all these practical things that we can do to enhance our student engagement in our digital space. Just ran into Sophie and Bruce here. So, hi, good morning, Sophie. Good morning. How are you? How are you? Yeah. Hey, buddy. All right, let's keep walking. Let's keep walking. So these are some tips and ideas. I'm actually going to share this with Bruce because Bruce teaches adult learners, and some of these ideas about managing and classroom management might be helpful to him. So I'm going to share this episode, Monica, with Bruce. His name's Bruce Messman. All right, take a listen for yourself. I'm glad to see my friends this morning as I'm walking, and that's all I got. Happy Valentine's Day to you. Hope it goes well, however it goes for you. And don't be lonely. Reach out, talk to some friends today. Okay? Bye. Hey, PLN. It's Friday, September 16, 2023, coming to you with Fresh Air at 5. And I'm out here at Abbotsford Secondary School getting ready for Pro D today. It is our learning conference here in the district, and I am going to do some learning. So today as we're out learning, we got a keynote, we got sessions, going to connect with Victoria Walder today, so I'm excited about that. And this morning, as I was on my way here, I skipped my morning walk, but I'm bringing you a listen that I did this morning to the Easy EdTech podcast. Bonus episode is Monica Burns talks with Snow White of Intel, who is an educator and now an educational consultant and doing work with Intel about the skills for the fourth industrial revolution, skills for innovation program that they are running over there. Talking about how we as educators can prepare for being able to effectively teach our students about the Internet of Things, about computer science and coding and integration of artificial intelligence, and how it's not going away in our world today. Are we readying our students for this fourth industrial revolution? First one was steam. Second one was the electricity. The third one has to do with computers and computations. And now we've got a whole lot more. So thank you, Snow White. Thank you, Monica, for the thoughts. And people, go check out Monica Burns. Sure, podcast is turning 5 next month. 5 years old. That's fantastic. Congratulations, Monica, to you. And yes, have yourself a fabulous day. I sure will. And with that, Carpenter out. I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's like a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find some other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific episode podcast titles and episode numbers in the show notes, which are only a click or swipe away for your learning convenience. I've also started to put together a Spotify playlist of each of the episodes so that you can also take a listen to those specifically, and the link to that playlist is in the show notes. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Brian Carr, BRYONCAR, or at Fresh Air at 5. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can be found on the Educational Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day. Get some fresh air before the day is out and take care of yourself, because you are worth it.